Hi, so thanks for meeting with me today. Um, we're looking for a new house, so I just wanted to get together and kind of see what the process looks like. I know you recommended this prior to seeing a house, so
Hmm.
that made sense to me. So,
Have you ever purchased a house before?
no, nope, this is our first time.
Okay.
I obviously know some friends and stuff that have bought homes. And
Hmm.
I've seen the process with them, and my
Hmm.
parents bought a home when I was in my late teens, early 20s.
Okay.
But that was 8 years ago now.
Right.
So yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what brought you to wanting to buy a house. Tell me a little bit about how you ended up sitting here. And like you said, you had known family and friends who purchased houses.
Yeah.
But why is now the time that you want to buy a house?
So I mean, graduated
And do you
college.
mind if I take some notes while we're
Yeah,
talking?
no, no, that's fine.
Awesome.
So after graduating college, I got a good job at a law firm, and I've slowly been saving up some money, but
Right.
it's just getting to the point where renting just doesn't make sense for me
Right.
anymore. So, it's time to buy a house, and it's the adult thing to do, I guess.
Hmm.
So,
Do you want it more as an investment or just comfort wise? Are you more comfortable in your own space? What's
I think
pushing the decision?
the big thing for me is I just don't want to keep writing a check and watching it go away. I want to
Right.
build up some equity,
Right.
and
You're writing the check anyway.
yeah, maybe years from now I'll put a HELOC on it, or
Right.
home equity
There's just
loan
more
or something.
opportunities with it.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
I can invest with it. Maybe I don't know. I just at least I own it. I own
Okay.
something.
So tell me a little bit about when you're looking to buy. Is it just you? Do you have a significant other? Do you have people who you're looking to buy with?
Just me right now.
Okay.
I would like it to be large enough that down the road, if I do get married, I'd be able to have some space.
Okay.
So, I mean, 3 bedrooms just seems like a minimum to me
Okay.
for that kind of thing. I don't know what kind of square footage a 3 bed's going to be, but,
Okay.
I would say that would be a good.
Okay. Do you mind? I have a ton of information, so I'm just going to
Yeah.
launch into it. I'm relieved to hear that you haven't purchased before because I don't have to undo any weird expectations. But this is our buyer's workbook.
Okay.
This is basically going to take us through the entire process in a very simplified format so that you don't have to memorize anything,
Mm-hmm.
but just giving you the milestones of what to look for that we're going to be experiencing along the way when it comes to buying
Okay.
and kind of what to expect and how we work,
Mm-hmm.
especially within our brokerage to help represent you
Yeah.
and to make sure that you are in the best position to purchase when it comes time to pull the trigger.
Okay.
Let me know, stop me at any point if you have any questions, okay?
Okay.
So we have here the first part of this whole process is the pre-qualification.
Okay.
Have you spoken to a bank yet? Have you gone that route?
I haven't. I don't
Okay.
think it'll be a problem. I don't know exactly what my credit is, but
Right.
I've had multiple credit cards and different small auto loans. They've
Okay.
always been paid off on time, no late payments
Okay.
ever. So I should have good established credit, I'm assuming.
Okay. So our first step is going to be before we see any houses, we're going to get pre-qualified first.
Okay.
Because we can't even get into any houses without a pre-qualification. Most sellers will require that we have a pre-qualification letter sent to their agent before we even see the house so that they know that
Okay.
it's not just tire kickers coming through the house.
Yeah.
They know that we're a serious buyer. And before we write an offer, we want to have that in place as well so that they see the same thing.
Okay.
So that's our first step. Not to mention, we really have to hammer out what's going to be the best financing form for you. So there are a lot of different types of loans. And you could always go the route of cash, but most people don't have, $100,000 in cash in their back pocket.
Right.
So most people who purchase with cash are older individuals who have downsized and they have this cash from the purchase or the sale of their house. So they
Okay.
usually use that. But most people who don't have that, large reserve of cash go the route of a loan. So you can get a conventional loan, you can get an FHA loan, USDA, VA, a lot of different acronyms. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, they all represent different down payments and
Okay.
different lending requirements. So some, because they're lower down payments, are going to be a little bit stricter when it comes to the loan.
Gotcha.
When it comes to the quality of the house, things like chipping paint might be a flag.
Oh.
So that's really
Okay.
important when we're looking at houses. If you're getting one of those loans that's lower down that has stricter
So
requirements.
if I'm getting a fixer upper, maybe.
Right. There are loans for
Okay.
almost anything, but we just
Yeah.
have to make sure that we have those in place for the type of houses you're looking for. Does
Gotcha.
that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense.
So this is our first step. If you have a contact with a bank that you want to reach out to, that's wonderful. We always suggest that you talk to a few people
Okay.
because it's really about who you're most comfortable with.
Gotcha.
And we can put you in touch with, 3 different lenders, and you can contact your own that
Okay.
really have very good quality products and we've done business with. They do a great job. And then you can interview them and see which one is the best fit if that works.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's going to be our first step. That's going to be, I'll send you away with those contacts and that information at the end, but you're going to
Okay.
reach out to them first.
Awesome.
So these are some questions to ask those lenders when you talk to them. How much do you qualify for? Because at the end of the day, they might tell you qualify for a crazy amount, but really you don't want to be eating ramen noodles in your brand new house.
That makes sense.
So you really
Sure.
want to have an idea of budget-wise what you're looking at in terms of comfort level. So they'll
Gotcha.
talk to you about that. They'll really work it backwards to make sure you're within your comfort zone, and then they'll provide that amount. We also have here to make sure that you understand the terms in terms of, are you doing a 30-year loan or a 15-year loan? So there are different terms like that that you may not have even thought about that they'll cover with you.
Okay.
We also want to make sure you understand how much you're going to need in closing costs, and we'll cover more about what closing costs include later on
Okay.
in the packet. But make sure you know how much you're going to have to bring to closing based on that purchase price amount.
Gotcha.
And then you can also ask them, what their rates are, their interest rates. How does your credit score affect your interest rate?
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, what are points? Because you can buy down interest rates sometimes, and that's something to have a conversation with them about.
Okay.
So these are just some questions to ask them. Any questions about this?
No, that all makes sense right now. Obviously, I'll read through this
Right.
a little bit later. Do I get to keep
Yes,
this?
you get to keep this, so you
Okay.
don't have to memorize any of this.
Good.
But
good.
these are just important things to be able to cover with your lender.
Perfect.
This is an option that we have for Habitat for Humanity. If
Oh.
you qualify income wise, it's a pretty stringent income threshold. But if you qualify, you would be able to talk to Habitat about potentially getting a Habitat home, which requires you take some certain educational courses. You're a part of the building process of that Habitat home if you do qualify. So we have the income thresholds right here.
Oh,
That if you
gotcha.
were to
Okay.
qualify, if you're under this income threshold, this would definitely be someone that you'd want to reach out to.
Gotcha.
The next portion goes over the most exciting part of the whole process,
Mm.
and it's figuring out, you had mentioned that you want 3 bedrooms minimum. This is where we're going to really hone in on what your requirements are. And I say requirements as we're differentiating between needs and wants. So
Okay.
what we want to figure out, because what we have is, I'm sure you've been looking at Zillow and Trulia and
Oh,
Realtor
yeah,
for
yeah.
houses. We have the MLS. We have a
Okay.
database that we, as realtors, have to put all of our listings into, and we hook you up with a search that links right to that database. So Zillow, Trulia, Realtor, they're all pulling their information from our database. But they can sometimes have a lag time, and in a really hot spring market, lag times are not acceptable when you're trying to compete.
Right.
So we hook you right up to the database. You get instant notifications when something within your criteria gets listed.
How
it's-
far behind are the other ones? I mean, if
It can
I'm
be sometimes 24 to 48 hours behind,
okay. Well,
which is pretty
yeah.
significant in a spring market.
yeah.
So this will hook up right to the MLS. It'll give you instant real-time notifications via email about properties that are falling within your criteria that just get
Awesome.
listed. You can also, it'll give you a website that you can track all those properties. You can delete them if you're not interested. But you could also make notes that we can see on the back end.
Yeah.
So if you're like, I
Oh.
love the style of this home, we get a better feel for what you're looking for.
Gotcha.
So that way,
So
if
this
we
is
know
an interactive thing. That as
Exactly.
I'm putting stuff in, you're kind of on the back end. You're,
Exactly.
You're seeing that.
exactly.
Oh,
and
that's cool.
and that way, if we know something's coming on the market, and we're like, hey, this is definitely a style Joe would love,
Okay.
we can get in on that first and really try to get you in there.
Awesome.
So let's go through it. Tell me, you had mentioned 3 bedrooms minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about your area. We can hone in on areas through school districts. We can do a geographic map search. We could do certain towns.
Anything within, probably a 15-minute drive of my work, which is in
Okay.
Canandaigua. So
So
just-
15 minutes surrounding Canandaigua. Is
Yeah.
there any area, any north, south, east, or west you want me to avoid?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything really that I'd want to avoid 15 minutes outside of Canandaigua. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 15 minutes surrounding Canandaigua. And then tell me a little bit about, you said 3 beds minimum. Is there a square footage minimum that you want
Well,
or need?
I feel like Yeah, probably over 1,200 square feet would be minimum. I would think.
Is that based on what you're living in right now? You're just feeling
Well,
out
my
the comfort
parents'
level?
house was a ranch house, and that was
Okay.
3 beds, and it was about 1,200 square feet. And I would certainly not want to go anything smaller than
Okay.
that.
That's what I was
Even
going to
even
ask.
just myself having friends or whatever
Right.
thing
That's
over.
what I was
it's
going to
just-
ask because
yeah.
remember, if you tell me 1,200 square feet and I put 1,200 square feet minimum, if something comes up that was 1,150 square feet that's perfect,
Right.
you're not going to see it.
Maybe let's do 1,100.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
just to be safe with that, but
Okay.
yeah, I likely wouldn't. But
Okay. But
just
if
to
it
be
was
safe.
perfect, you
Yeah.
know, and it was the
Yeah,
right
yeah, yeah.
price, okay.
Okay.
So we have square footage of 1,100 square feet minimum. We have
Mhm.
15 minutes surrounding Canandaigua. So I'll do like a radius search around
Okay.
Canandaigua. 3 bedrooms minimum. Now tell me, do you need anything else in terms of like acreage, an outbuilding, maybe a garage? I know those, you probably want some of those things, but you need them.
1.5 baths.
Okay.
That's to me just having people around. Or over. I'd like to have my own bath and a half bath where people can.
Now, when
use
you
that.
say a half bath, would a powder room be okay?
Yeah, just sink and
Okay.
just a half bath.
So what I can put in is 1.1 baths because that means that there's a powder room / it might be a half bath, but it at least includes powder rooms.
Gotcha.
The only
Okay.
problem with that is that it basically just means there's a toilet somewhere else in the house.
Oh,
So we might find that powder room was just a random toilet sitting in a basement.
well, I mean, let's leave it at that because
I don't want
I
to
can-
rule out.
Yeah, I could always, it might give me a nice little construction project or something
Okay.
down the road. So.
And as we're looking through them, we'll be able to see, okay, this one, we don't see that half bath. It's
Yeah.
probably not a true half bath. But at
Okay.
least my goal is we keep it broad in the beginning and then we
Okay.
can bring it back in
Yeah,
as you kind of get a feel for what's out there. But at least this gives you a feel.
I would say a half acre for
Okay.
me is gotta be a half acre.
Tell me, is it the acreage or is it the privacy that's more important?
That's a good question. Probably the privacy. I mean,
Okay.
I could be on a postage stamp, but if I'm in the middle of like surrounded by woods and farms and stuff, I'd be just as happy.
So what if because with your criteria right now, we have a good range. What if we take that out for now
Okay.
and put in maybe like 0.25 or even 0.2?
I guess I don't want to be in the city.
Oh, okay. So you don't want to be in the city of Canandaigua.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can eliminate just the city in general of Canandaigua
Yeah, I think that would be
instead
good.
of doing a half an acre.
Yeah, I just want to have that more country atmosphere.
Okay.
Just more comfortable with that, and it just, been putting this off for so long. I want it to be what I want it to be.
No, understandable. I just want to make sure if it is the perfect fit that we don't lose it because of the acreage or something like that.
Right.
But
right.
if it's really avoiding the city, that makes sense, and we can eliminate. Well, I'll just do a little circle around to eliminate the city, and we'll do the map search before we leave here. We'll pull up the computer and we'll
Okay.
do the search together so that you
Gotcha.
can really tell me area wise where to stop. Does that
Okay.
work?
That sounds good.
Are there any other needs that you have?
Nope.
Okay, no garage, no outbuildings. I
Nope.
know those are probably wants though. correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Those
So-
are.
Wants are some extra space
Mhm.
for outside, but not a need.
Yeah.
Okay. Is school district important or
No.
okay?
Nope. And even if I had all the school districts are pretty good.
Okay.
So
What is your time frame for wanting to move?
it's just 3 to 6 months.
Okay, that's typical. The average closing process generally takes around 60 days, 30 to
Okay.
60 days if you don't have a house to sell.
Mhm.
And then it usually takes another 2 to 3 months to find the one that you want. So we
Yeah.
generally
Okay.
say it takes around 6 months for the whole process.
Okay.
Some people will find it within 30 days.
How long to get? So if I call my lender
Yep.
tomorrow or today,
Mhm.
how long will it take me to get pre-qualified? I mean, I've got all of I can get him anything he needs. I'm
Right.
pretty
You should be
organized.
able to just have that squared away over the phone.
Oh,
They'll
okay.
need to verify some of your income and things like that as we go through the process.
Gotcha.
But just for the pre-qualification, as long as you're not giving them, incorrect information, you'll be able to get that
Gotcha.
within the phone call.
okay.
That's very quick.
Awesome. Very cool.
So generally, the whole process is 6 months. It can take as quickly as 2 months, if you find something within 30 days, then close within 30 days.
Okay.
So it can be as fast as 2 months, some average is between 4 and 6, but that's going to be generally your time frame, which sounds like it lines up with what you're looking to do.
Oh, definitely.
Do you have any questions about any of this?
No, that all sounds really good.
Okay. Now, tell me, do you have, when it comes to scheduling your showings, what I want to talk to you a little bit about, do you have a smartphone?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that makes this a lot easier then. So the first thing when it comes to getting your showing squared away and kind of expectations and what to plan on, know the portal. So what I said before about the MLS and that database that we use that
Yeah.
we're hooking you up with.
So
It's
this
called-
schedules through that.
Well, somewhat, yes.
Okay.
We use that to schedule, but the portal is called Matrix. And understand when you save and when you make notes and whatnot, that makes it easier for us to be able to go in when you say, I want to see this property on, Main Street. And we're like, oh boy, there are a few properties on Main Street. We can go right into your portal and see, okay, that's the one,
Gotcha.
and get it scheduled. So you might not know off the top of your head which one it was, but we can see it, and it makes communication a lot easier.
Oh,
So
that
make
makes
sure
sense.
you're
Yeah.
saving properties that you really want to see, and that way we can keep track of them easier.
Gotcha.
Qualify the property. Make sure you at least look at the taxes and assessed value, and you'll see
Okay.
them right on the emails we send with the information of the property.
Okay.
You'll see what the assessed value is and what the taxes are. And that's really important because your mortgage payment is going to reflect those taxes.
Hmm.
So if they're asking, $150,000 for a property, but the taxes are only assessed at 80, your taxes are going to go
They're
up.
going to go up to that.
And so that
Okay.
might automatically boot you out just with what you want to spend. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean?
Okay.
So make sure you look at that. Review all the pictures and the descriptions. So it's hard to sometimes get a feel for layout wise how a house is truly laid out.
Yeah.
Make sure you look through all the pictures and the descriptions, because sometimes the descriptions help you kind of piece that together, or
Okay.
might say, one of the bedrooms is a complete rehab and they don't include that picture. And that's important to know.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Is it helpful? Like, I mean, I could do a drive-by or like. Google,
Well, that's what I was going to say
Google
next.
Views or
Check
something?
out the aerial maps to see the surrounding lots and dimensions.
Okay.
So we love if you're able to do a drive-by, but
Yeah.
at minimum, make sure you check out the aerial maps and the Google Maps.
Oh, okay.
Because if privacy is a major factor for you,
right.
you'll be able
yeah.
to see, oh, this is right next to a factory. It may
Yeah.
be right on a country road, but it's right next to the factory,
Yeah,
and
would
I don't
not
want
that.
exactly. So make sure you're checking that out so that you get a true understanding of how the property is laid out.
Okay.
When it comes to scheduling the showing, when you find one that you like, text the full street address and the day and time that you're interested in. And like I said, if you can't remember it off the top of your head, if you've saved it in the portal, we'll be able to identify it. But
Okay.
text us a couple days and times that work for you. And then that way we'll at least be able to schedule something within your time frame.
Gotcha.
But that way we are all on the same page with it. And if we can back them up with other properties, so if you have 3 or 4 that you've saved and you're like, I
Try
really
to put them together. A
try
little.
lumping them together, just because it's also easier for you to look at one house and compare it to another and hone in faster on what you like.
Oh, that makes sense.
When you have
Yeah.
a metric to be able to compare it against,
Right.
it really helps you really identify what's important. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yep.
So the other thing that I wanted to ask you is price point. What have you been looking at right now when it comes to your price point? I know that we're not going to know for sure until you
Yeah.
talk to the lender,
Like-
but do you have a gauge?
180 to 200. I mean, I've just hopped on Zillow to see like your mortgage app
Yep.
thing.
Mhm.
That seems. I think I'd be comfortable there, but obviously you were talking taxes and
Right.
stuff, so I don't really know.
Right.
But I think that would be kind of my ballpark.
Okay.
So I'll make sure to talk to the lender.
When
and
I set
verify
up
that.
when we set up the search before we leave here, like I said, I'll pull my computer out, we'll put it right here, and we'll set up the search together.
Okay.
But I would recommend that we maybe do like a 210 high, because the idea is that you don't want to spend 210, but if something's been listed for a year at 210, the likelihood of them coming down to 200
Okay.
is pretty high.
Okay.
So but keeping in mind that that's not your brand new property that came on the market for
Right.
210, they're not
Okay.
going to drop instantly, but over time the likelihood goes up.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
These are some styles of homes Cape Cod, colonials, contemporary, raised
No,
ranches.
Raised ranch, no.
So there's
No.
so you don't like raised ranches.
No.
And what
I know it
about
works for a lot of people, just not
splits?
no. And townhouse, condominium. I don't think I'd see any of those given what I'm looking for, but I don't think I'd want one of those.
Okay, and what about mobiles?
Nope.
Okay. And just so you know, with mobiles, the reason I ask is because they're harder to get lending and financing on.
Oh,
So
okay.
when you do get financed, it's very doable, but they usually will require 15, 20, 25 sometimes percent down.
Oh,
So down
interesting.
payments
Okay.
are a lot higher.
Yeah,
There are
no,
some
I'm
very niche lenders who can go down to 3%, but there are a lot of requirements and they can't be in mobile homes. They have to be
Gotcha.
on their
You
own
have to
lots.
own the,
Right.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Whether I owned it or not.
So no mobiles,
No.
no townhomes, no splits, and no raised ranches. Does that sound accurate?
Yep.
Any questions about any of this so far?
No.
And then this is what I wanted to go through in terms of breaking down your closing costs. So these are pretty approximate pricing. This is pretty approximate pricing, but pretty accurate. So we have your biggest costs when it comes to your down payment or when it comes to your closing costs are your down payment and your property taxes.
Okay.
Those are the biggest ones. Those are $1,000 plus in terms of the cost.
Okay. So I pay in property taxes paid a year in
Right.
advance, right?
Exactly.
So what if I'm like halfway through the year? Would I just pay half the tax then?
So what happens is they're going to be prorated for their amount that year that they've paid up to. And by prorated,
Okay.
I mean paid per day, whatever that, breakdown is. They pay for their portion and then you pay for the remaining time that you're living there. And then it's built into your monthly mortgage payment so that you're constantly a year in advance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The
Okay.
government likes to make sure they're paid up a
So
year in advance.
essentially, if I'm at the beginning of the tax season and my taxes for the house are $5,000, I'm paying that $5,000 right out of the gate.
Exactly.
In my closing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then it's incorporated in your monthly payment. Most of the time, there are some lenders who won't build that in, and you have to pay it on your own.
Gotcha.
But most lenders will. What it's called escrow that in, so it's built into your monthly payment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you have your property taxes and your down payment, and then you have $200 to $900 costs like appraisal and credit reports, your attorney, recording fees, things like that that just add up to the remaining difference. So when you talk to the lender and he's talking or she's talking about these closing costs, this is what they're referring to. And maybe you can find one that I know a lot of lenders waive origination fees for like VA loans. Maybe
Okay.
they're willing to do that or do some lender credits that can help. Ask them about those things
Okay.
because this is what they're talking about when they discuss that with you.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then the last page here goes through some resources that we have. If you have, we have some common Q&A. If you have questions about how to read the MLS listings that we send over, we have a whole page for that. So feel free to hop onto our website and check those out.
Okay.
If you want any light reading or have any other questions. Does that make
Awesome.
sense?
Yep. That makes sense.
So the next piece I have for you, the next thing I want to talk to you about is what a purchase contract looks like. So
Okay.
when it comes time to write an offer, we do a lot of things electronically. So I always
Oh,
like to
that's
make
nice.
sure, I know, and it makes it easier for everyone because now we don't have to worry about running to you, to me, to the other, to the seller, everyone
Right.
to get signatures. Well, and then scan it in and send it to the next person. We
Oh.
just put it right in the system, send it to you, and it automatically goes out.
I kind of wondered because when we're done like seeing a house, I'm not going to just sign a contract right there. So I can think about it and let you know, and then you can fill this out and send it to me.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And then
that's nice.
everyone
Okay.
gets a copy of it as well. So you
Okay.
always have copies of all of your documents.
Right.
So this goes through all of the details of the listing and the property and the terms. I'm not going to hit every single line, but I'm going to hit the main points so that you understand them.
Okay.
And that when we do it electronically, you know what you're signing and you
Right.
understand the terms that we're discussing.
Appreciate that.
So it goes through the names of both the buyer and the seller. It goes through the property. It goes through any items that are excluded. So any items that are fixed to the property, TV, wall mounts, light fixtures specifically, those all stay with the property unless we write in that they're excluded. So if a seller says, I'm taking my great aunt's chandelier, they have to specifically exclude that here.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, it's by default included.
Okay.
This just states that all heating and cooling and all HVAC is to be in working order prior to closing. And then this is where we write in the price that we want to offer. So the key to this piece is that there is, I don't know if you're familiar with the term seller pays closing costs.
Yeah, sure.
My least favorite term. It's very deceptive. Seller doesn't necessarily pay closing costs. What we do is we kind of trick our wording into financing in some of those closing costs.
Oh,
So,
okay.
if you say, you know, I love this property, it's listed, we can get it for, you want to offer 150,
Mhm.
but you're getting a type of loan that allows you, like FHA or VA, to build in, you know, 6% closing costs or around that. Different loan types allow for different percentages. So
Okay.
conventional usually only allows you to build in 3% of that 150 to put towards your closing costs.
Gotcha.
So basically what we're saying is, okay, we'll give this seller 150, but maybe we write in 167 or that would be too much, but 157, and 7,000 of that is to go towards closing costs.
So I'm financing.
You're financing
I'm
it in.
financing those closing costs.
So we would write
I see.
in the amount plus what we wanted to finance in, 157 right here.
Okay.
And then we'd identify on this third line that 7,000 of that is to go towards your closing costs. So they're
Gotcha.
only getting that 150.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
But that means that you have $7,000 less that you have to bring to closing.
Okay.
You pay for it over the life of the loan, and in that you pay interest on it, you know. But if you're only talking about 3.5-4% interest rates, a lot of people find that it's worth it to have that 7,000 readily available when they're buying a house
Right.
in case something happens. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Other people don't like paying interest on it, so they just come up with it at closing. You know, so really, it's about what's important to you and
So
what
if
you're most
you're tight
comfortable
on
with.
cash, this is probably a really
Yeah.
good way to go.
Exactly.
Okay.
Between a low down payment option and being able to build in closing costs, if you're tight on cash, you can really do a lot with those two things.
Gotcha.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
This is also where we put in the deposit. Anytime you get an accepted offer, we then have a deposit that just shows that we have skin in the game.
Mhm.
The seller doesn't get it. It's not like we're handing them $500.
Okay.
But if you're looking at, it's usually 1 to 2% of the purchase price. So if you're looking at $100,000 or $200,000 house, it's between $1,000 and $2,000. And you write it out within 2 days of a accepted contract, and you mail it to the listing brokerage. So their brokerage puts it in their brokerage escrow account that nobody can touch, and holds it until closing.
Okay.
And what that does, and attorneys can also hold it if that's more comfortable for the buyer and seller.
Okay.
But a third party, either one of the brokerages or the attorneys, hold that in their escrow account, meant for just third party funds that nobody has access to.
Mhm.
And what it does is that if you decide that you want to back out for any reason outside of this contract,
Mhm.
if you breach contract, it allows the seller to then be compensated for the time off market that they've spent. That if you're just like day before closing, look, this was a terrible mistake, I want to move to Florida, it then allows them to be compensated for all the time and costs that they've put into getting this house sold to you.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it just shows we have skin in the game. The next piece just narrows down our basically the contingencies, and that's the biggest piece of the contract. It's the ways that we build in to get you out if something happens. So first piece is mortgage commitment contingency. If you for some reason can't get your mortgage, if you lose your job, if interest rates skyrocket to 20%,
Right.
we can cancel and we can get out and you can get your deposit back.
Ah, that's good. Okay.
Yep.
I always kind of wondered that, and that makes sense.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
There is a attorney approval window. So once we have an accepted contract at 157, 7,000 in concessions, it then goes to the attorneys, both your attorney, and if you don't have one, we have a handful of attorneys we can recommend
Mhm.
that do a great job, real estate specific attorneys, and it goes to the seller's attorney as well. So they both give each of you a call. Seller's attorney talks to their seller, your attorney talks to you. They go through the contract just like we're doing, and make sure you understand it and that everything is the way you wanted it to be.
Gotcha.
You don't have any questions about it. What it does is it gives a grace period so that if there wasn't something that you wanted in there that you wanted to change, if there was something that you needed to kind of modify, it allows for that. But it also kind of just gives a way out for 3 days. In 3 days.
Gotcha.
So you could always say, oh my gosh, what have I done? Cancel the contract. I made
Yeah.
a terrible mistake. Ideally, that won't happen. Ideally, it's really more for, oh, I thought that, the closing date was closer to this day, just misunderstandings. But if something did happen in that 3 days, you could cancel without any reason, just be done.
Okay.
But that also allows the seller to be able to do that as well. So
Gotcha.
what can happen is if another offer comes in that's better, they can cancel our contract and accept that without any reason
Okay.
within that 3-day window.
If I wanted to make my offer more competitive, can I just forego that, or would you not recommend doing that?
No, oh my gosh, no. I never recommend you forego attorney approval, because having attorney and legal eyes on this for anything that, especially in the heat of the
Yeah.
moment, if it's that competitive of a situation, you're probably making an offer pretty quickly. You probably haven't had time to digest it all, in the
That makes
amount of
sense.
time that you should.
Right.
And you never want to end up in a spot legally that would put you in a terrible or compromising position. I would never want you in that position.
Gotcha.
So I never recommend that. That's one of the most important contingencies,
Okay.
and it really just covers you to an extreme that is necessary. Does that make sense?
Good to know. Yeah.
There's also property inspection contingency. It allows you to, within a certain amount of days of an accepted contract, go through with any contractors, inspectors, professionals to take a look at the house, really the guts of the house, the inside, and it's for any major safety items.
Okay.
It's for anything, if they said they put a new roof on last year, but we
Right.
find out that it's actually 25 years old, well, that's a cost that we didn't expect when we put in our offer.
Gotcha. So it's really for unforeseen or unknown.
Major or safety items.
Okay.
It's not for your, this has a little bit of a chip in the wall here. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
It's more for safety items or big ticket items that weren't accounted for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
This is all attorney mumbo jumbo. This just states that it is solely the responsibility of the attorneys to make sure that the title is clean and clear, that there are no judgments or liens or anything like that against the property when you buy it.
Okay.
So the attorney is going to make sure that the title is clear prior to closing so that nothing transfers when you purchase it. You don't owe any back taxes or anything like that.
So like the mineral rights and the
Yep, that
gas
those are all
rights,
included.
that's all coming with.
Yep,
Okay.
that,
So
especially for like hunting land and whatnot, that's really important that they review all of that. Any gas and mineral right contracts that had been on
Gotcha.
it previously, that's all null and void.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then it also states that the closing date is going to be within X amount of days. Like I said, it's usually 30 to 60. If we want to be more competitive, sometimes people might want to close sooner.
Okay.
We might want to try to build in, 30 days and be super competitive.
Mhm.
But sometimes people need a little bit more time if they've been there longer. So that's
Gotcha.
a term that we kind of fluctuate to be more competitive
Okay.
with the situation of the seller. Does that make sense?
Yep.
This also states the possession of the property. Usually you go to closing and then you can get in the property after you close. But we can also negotiate pre-possession or post-possession depending. So maybe
Okay.
the seller has to wait, we have closing for the 1st of June, but their kids are in school until June 17th. They might
Yeah.
want to stay in that home until June 17th and pay rent to you, just like
Okay.
you're doing right now. So you'd be the landlord and then you take possession after.
Gotcha.
So those are some terms that we sometimes think about to make our offer more appealing or not as well, to work with
Okay.
the seller and what
That
they're
makes
trying to do.
sense. Yep.
It doesn't really fall into play a lot when you are renting and buying a house, but when you
Right.
have a house to sell and you're buying another, some sellers will need that at times.
I can be really flexible on that because my renting situation is really easy. So
Good. This is just a summary of the whole contract that we just talked about. Do you have any questions about it?
no, I think all makes sense. I might have one or two questions like when it comes time to actually go through it,
Right.
but this is really helping.
And the electronic signatures will take you through each page, so you can make sure that you're seeing what
Okay.
what the terms are that were put in there,
Gotcha.
and
Okay.
you'll be able to break it down at that point too.
Okay. Perfect.
And then this is just the signature and admin page showing all of our information.
Okay.
That makes
Awesome.
sense?
Yep.
So the last piece that I have for you is our buyer agency agreement. This just states that we are allowed to represent you as a buyer. So we'd love the opportunity to help you through the process and are excited for you. And just like when we list our houses
Mhm.
and we need a listing agreement to go list, John Doe's house,
You're right.
we also
right.
do a buyer agreement to make sure that we're properly representing you. and
Okay.
protecting you
Mm-hmm.
and working in your best interest. So I'll go through it with you. What it states is that your name, we have the ability to represent you as a brokerage with Crane Realty, and then we can represent you in the purchase of a residential investment, some vacant land, different, whatever type you're looking for. Usually we put in new build and residential investment and residential because people can sometimes buy duplexes, things like that.
Gotcha.
So it just states that we can represent you in that transaction. This does not mean that you have to buy a property, and it does not mean that you
Okay.
have to buy within a certain period of time.
That was my next question.
It just means that if you do decide to, that we would be able to represent you and we would be your realtor of choice.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is the term of the agency. Usually we do 8 months to a year, and that's
Okay.
only because we can't guarantee how long it's going to take somebody
Right,
to
it
find the
might-
house that they're looking at.
Sure. It might
Average,
take a while.
right? Average is 6 months, but we usually build in that little bit of buffer so that people don't feel rushed.
Okay.
But we can always change it too. We can amend it. We can make it shorter. We can make it longer, and then just feel it out as we go.
Gotcha.
So transaction fee, our brokerage charges a certain percentage to be able to represent you, but the seller in this area is the one who typically pays for it.
Gotcha.
And what that looks like is that when we pull up your search results, when we do the MLS
Mhm.
search that we're going to do at the end here, I'll show you when you look through the listing information, it shows that there's a certain percentage that's offered to the buyer's agent. And that means that when the seller goes to sell, part of their closing costs are real estate fees.
Okay.
And that includes both their realtor and any realtor that brings a buyer.
Gotcha.
Now, obviously, you're the buyer in this situation, so you won't have to pay those fees. And it's not free necessarily. It just
Right.
is built in so that when you go to sell, it's kind of expected, okay, now you'll pay
Gotcha.
those fees.
Okay.
But typically that's covered by the seller. The only time that it's not is some sellers who are for sale by owners or some banks.
Okay.
They will cover a portion, but they may not do the full amount that we charge, the full percentage. So
Okay.
that remaining percentage, that is what the buyer has to come up with at that point. That's the only
Gotcha.
time
But
that
that's
you're.
not too common.
That's not too common, and it's always a
Okay.
conversation. So you'd know, hey, guy, before we went and saw, if you're like, I saw
Gotcha.
this for sale by owner, make sure you send us those listings. If they're for sale by owner, bank owns, anything that's not on the
Okay.
MLS, maybe you're driving by them.
And would you negotiate with the seller on
Yes.
my behalf, maybe?
Absolutely.
I mean, if we found a house that was 1% less than what your
Right.
brokerage charges, you guys would maybe we could offer.
Right. So what we
Okay.
do is if you see a house on, 123 Main Street that's not on the market in the MLS,
Mhm.
but they have a for sale by owner sign out front, or maybe it's auction.com or whatever
Right.
it is, take a picture of it, send it to me. I'll look up the information. I'll call the seller and I'll say, hey, I'm a buyer's agent. I'm working with, so-and-so buyer, and we're really interested in seeing the house. What are you willing to pay for commission? Are you willing to build this in?
Okay.
If they,
Gotcha.
we negotiate that. If they say, nope, absolutely not, we're only willing to pay this much, and there's still a difference there of 1%, then that's when you and I could strategize. Okay, maybe you come up with that 1%, but we offer 1% less to the seller
sure.
to make
Yeah,
up. We
that
just
would make
build it
sense.
in. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That way, it's a win-win.
Right.
But those are the only situations. Most of the time, we're not even going to have this conversation about
Yeah.
it. It's just
No,
going to
it's
be
just good
included.
to know.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yep.
This last portion covers all of the ways that I'm responsible and accountable to you. So
Okay.
these are the ways that you're protected when it comes to a buyer's agent. At the end of the day, everything that you provide me financially, all of your personal information, all of the background regarding your circumstances, that's all confidential. It's all
Okay.
kept under lock and key. So, for example, when you go to an open house, if you were to come through my open house and on 123 Main Street and say, oh my gosh, I would spend $1 million for this house, you bet that I'm going to go to the seller and I'm going to say, hey, when we get an offer from him, don't come down because he'll pay asking.
Right.
Whereas if you go to 123 Main Street and you go through the property and someone else has it listed and you call me and you say, hey, I would spend $1 million on this house, I'm going to call them and I'm going to say, yeah, there's some interest. Do you have any other offers?
Right.
So that it's my job to get you the most house for your money.
Gotcha.
Whereas it's the selling agent's job to get you to get them the most money for their house.
Gotcha.
And so at the end of the day, my accountability and my loyalty is to you.
Right.
And I'm making
Okay.
sure that I'm working in your best interest alone.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions on any of that?
No, I think that makes really good sense.
Okay.
I don't have any questions right now.
So what we can do is we're going to set up the MLS search,
Okay.
and we can do the buyer's agency one of two ways. I always like to have this signed right before we go so that we can start seeing houses, so that
Okay.
we can start getting into houses, and I can start representing you
Perfect.
very exclusively as your agent. Does that make sense?
Yep. That sounds
We'll
good.
do it that way. If there was somebody else involved, or if you needed to take it home and have somebody else sign, we could always do that too. And at that point, you could just bring it to the first showing and give it to me
Okay.
then. But there's nobody else that you're buying with, right?
Nope.
Okay.
Just me.
So we'll do this now, and then we'll set it up in the MLS and get your search set up and ready to go. And then the
Okay.
only other thing is make sure you call your lenders that you want to reach out to, and have that pre-qualification squared away so that we can either adjust the price or tweak some of those search requirements before we start seeing houses.
Sounds awesome. Cool.